All right. Well, good morning. We're so excited to have Erica Smith Ewing here today from the Institute for Justice, and she's telling us all kinds of legal advice. You've been doing this for a long time, Erica. So we're so happy to have you today. And if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and your work as we get started.
Sure. So my name is Erica Ewing. I'm a senior attorney at the Institute for Justice. We're a national nonprofit. We've been around for over 30 years. And one of the areas of law we focus on is educational choice. And in the last couple of years, we've had a special focus on microschools. And what we do is we help people who are in active conflicts with the government. Maybe the government is trying to shut you down or restrict you or is giving you a hard time. And that's when we swoop in. We work free of charge. It's a fantastic job to be able to work with all of you.
That's wonderful. And can I just ask, do you serve s- um, edupreneurs or founders that are in all 50 states, or is there specific regions that you focus on?
All 50 states.
Okay, that's really wonderful. And are there common issues that a lot of people come to you with?
Oh yes. So the big issues that we see are fire code. You're operating or you're about to operating, and all of a sudden the fire marshal comes by and says you have to do $70,000 of upgrades and put in a fire sprinkler. That's very common. We see a lot of zoning issues where folks will maybe they're operating out of a home, maybe they're operating out of a commercial space. But because the regulators don't know how to treat you, they don't know if you're a private school or a daycare or a tutoring center. There's all these question marks, and it's not clear how the local laws are applying to you, or maybe the local laws are even being interpreted to, stop you altogether. And the other thing that we see is state laws, state licensing laws, treating you as a private school. And in some states, that means you have to do quite a lot of registration, even certifications and licensing and educational degrees that you really shouldn't need for a micro school.
Yeah, I know we've had our microschool operate in three different jurisdictions, and so every single one was different. Every single zoning, coding, requirements were all different legal hoops to jump through, putting in a water fountain, putting in separate gender toilets, putting in a lot of things that were just a huge expense for us that were very unnecessary. So absolutely, I know that what you're doing is so important and it's so helpful for people because yeah, it's a real challenge. So I'll let you dive in if you want to get started. You're the expert here, so we're happy to have you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. All right, let's dive right in. So, 7 legal tips. So, this presentation is designed for the founder who's already started to do their research. Maybe they've done exhaustive research and they still have questions. So, these tips are designed to help you navigate when there is that big question mark about how you're regulated under the law. All right, so tip number 1, don't be
And
afraid.
sorry, I just wanted to say before you get started, at Micro Schools Network, we really have a big global network of schools all around the world. So Erica's expertise is specifically in the United States. So just in case you're coming from another country, perhaps some of this might be useful, but of course, always check in your local jurisdiction and things as well.
Very good point. So tip number 1, don't be afraid to reach out to government officials directly. I know a lot of micro schools are tempted to operate under the radar. They know they're in the gray zone, so they want to stay in that gray zone. But it can be extremely helpful when you have questions to just reach out directly. Sometimes it just takes finding that one person who can sit you down or talk to you on the phone and walk through exactly everything you have to do or explain, oh, yes, you can use this loophole or you don't have to worry about that. I Another thing you could think about is, can you even go down there in person? Bring a plate of cookies, bring a pie, be likable, put on that smile even if you don't feel like smiling and you're really under quite a lot of stress. Just sitting down with real people can get you a lot of the answers that you need. I was talking to one micro school in North Carolina who did try reaching out by email, and she was getting the runaround. One department was saying, oh, talk to the other department, and that department kept saying, no, talk to them. And this was going on for months. And finally, after 3 or 4 months, she got put in touch with the one person who had all the answers. if you're in that situation, say, hey, why don't we all get together for a meeting and sort this out? Or go down there yourself. Sometimes it's a matter of instead of a person shooting off an email and dismissing you, they might say, oh, let's just walk down the hallway and talk to Joe. And suddenly you have your answers. Now, you don't have to out yourself if you are doing this. You can do this anonymously. If you still want to be under the radar, you can create an email address that doesn't have your name on it and not share, just put your first name or not put any name at all. I've done this myself, and you can still get good answers that way. So, second tip, this
I think
is,
it's, sorry, I just think it's a really good point to go in there in person and sometimes it's just a matter of, you know, being someone that someone actually recognizes and like you're a real person, you have legitimate great interest for the community, all the different things and it's very it can get you a lot farther faster than sometimes the emailing and calling and getting passed around. I think we've all been through lots of those government meetings.
yeah, absolutely. I think there's also data that if you share your story with someone, they feel more invested in you and feel compelled to help you.
Hmm.
So that's a tip too, especially if you have like a sweet, sympathetic little operation, just telling what you're trying to do for these kids, suddenly the regulator might be more inclined to help you.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, they have families, they have kids, grandkids, and so they certainly understand the need for the sort of school that you're trying to do for your kids. And so absolutely, if it's for kids, then I think there's another added layer of maybe sympathy, empathy, interest in helping you.
Yes, absolutely. So second tip, I think this might be the most important tip of this whole presentation is to get it in writing. Most of the conversations we do have are verbal, in person, over the phone, and it's so often the case that misunderstandings happen. Uh, and these misunderstandings could be on the behalf of the regulator, it could be on behalf of you, or both, because you are dealing with kind of complex areas of the law. So just if you have a conversation, you go down there in person, you bring your pie, follow up in writing and say, hey, we talked today. This is what I understood that you said. Is that correct? And if you don't have their email address, call their office, get their email address. This is so, so important. So many times people have thought the regulator said something and they got a little bit of it wrong, and it creates a big problem. The other advantage to doing this is that some officials can be very casual when they're talking to you in person. But if they're writing an email and they know they're creating a paper trail, they think about their answer more and they give you a more correct, more thorough answer. So absolutely get it in writing. Tip and this is an important caveat. I think when people do have an answer in writing, there's the tendency to think that it's legally binding on that person. So let's say a zoning official says, yep, you're free to operate. You don't need a permit. Go ahead, have fun. And it's in writing, and you think, I have this. I'm in the clear. Please keep in mind, this is not a guarantee. Officials are allowed to make mistakes and take things back. But when you have it in writing, it just makes it so much less likely that will happen, and they're going to be much more willing to help you and fix the mistake if they did make a mistake later. So it's not a guarantee, but it's very helpful.
Yeah, that's something to definitely think about.
Yeah. Tip number three, don't be afraid to push back and ask follow-up questions. If someone tells you, no, you can't operate, say, well, what if I change my operation? What if I change the hours I'm operating? What if I change the amount of days I'm operating? I go from 4 days a week to 3 days a week. Sometimes asking that follow-up question gets you where you need to be. And you you think you wouldn't have to do that. And a regulator would tell you like, oh, this is how you can change things. But sometimes they don't think to do that. And they just say, nope, you can't do that. And then you're like, gosh, I can't do anything. Where actually the truth is if you had tweaked something, you can do exactly what you want to do or something very close to it. I think this tip is also very true if you get an answer you do like. Sometimes we hear the answer, we look at it through rose-colored glasses, and we're not pushing back. I know a couple in Utah, they wanted to buy a house and put 40 kids in there for their micro school. And the zoning official said, you are likely to be able to do this. And they got it in writing and everything. But when it came time to open the school, that same person came back and said, oh, yeah, you can still do it, but instead of having 40 kids, you could only have 20 kids. Well, suddenly their micro school was not financially viable. If you get an answer that's a little squishy or maybe seems a little too good to be true, push back on that. These people got the likely, say, well, how do we get it to absolutely? How do we get that certainty? Or, just push a little bit more. Tip number 4, research before you commit. Now, sometimes you don't have a choice where you're going to be operating. You have to be in your house, that's it. But other times you have a choice. You can choose between your town or a neighboring town. If you have the choice, do all the research first. It may be the case that one town has better laws than another, or one town has more friendly staff than another. And if that's the case, you want to know that before you start looking at the real estate listings, before you start putting offers in on a property, before you start signing the lease. Um, there's been a few micro schools I've talked to that felt a lot of pressure because they found a property they really liked and then they had only 30 days to, put in an offer and finalize it. And because they were rushing the legal research, they wound up in a bind. So if you can research before you put the offer in, before you start committing to properties, that's a much better situation to be in.
Yeah, that's really important. I hadn't thought about it, but it does make a big difference because sometimes you're in a bordering area or just outside of this area is a lot more friendly than the other point. That's a great point to think about.
Yeah, and sometimes you're choosing a neighborhood because it's cheaper, but it might be worth paying more in the mortgage or more in the monthly rent to be in a friendlier environment. So it's something to think about.
Yeah, and some have specific commercial zoning laws and what can and can't be in that space. And so, yeah, that's research. Research is your friend. Absolutely.
Tip number 5. This is really true for if you're looking to be in a residential area. Don't forget to check with the HOA. In a lot of places will have a private association that has its own laws. And sometimes those laws, through the HOA will restrict home businesses. So that's something to check with before you get going. Um, I was working with one micro school in Colorado. She told me that she had a landlord and an HOA. And I was like, "Oh, this is not going to work." But it actually did. She talked to them and they were both fine with it. But that's not always the case. So check with them, get it in writing before you commit to that. Some parts of the country also have restrictions on the deed itself. The deed to the property might say you can't have a home business or you can only have certain types of home businesses. So you can look at your actual deed for the property to see if that's true. I said get it in writing was my favorite tip. This is my other favorite tip in the presentation is to be a good neighbor. I've been doing zoning work for 14 years, and 95% of the time, when someone has a problem under the zoning law, it's because the neighbor complained. And this is so, so true with micro schools because you have a bunch of kids coming, whether you're a commercial property or residential property, there's a lot of traffic. A lot of times the traffic's at the same time during the day because you have the drop-offs and the pickups, and neighbors can get annoyed. And they're going to be the ones that are going to put in the complaint with the local officials, and suddenly you're in the spotlight, whereas before you were operating under the radar. So the best way to handle this is to prevent it from ever happening. When you first move there, make friends with your neighbors. Go over, say hi, tell them what you're going to be doing, maybe bring them those cookies, and see if they have concerns ahead of time. Even if your neighbor is a curmudgeon and they're not being very reasonable, you might be able to at least make them feel heard and address their concerns. If the concern is with drop-offs and parking, maybe you can stagger the parking. Maybe you could do carpooling. Maybe you could make sure nobody's parking in front of the neighbors' homes, in front of the neighbors' businesses. There's ways to prevent this and to prevent complaints and issues down the line just by being a good neighbor.
Yeah, that's really essential. It's something that's pretty easy to do, you know? I mean, even like you said, even if they are a curmudgeon, someone has a sweet spot for something. So so applying them to try and mitigate any future disagreements or issues, or just being a resource if they do have a problem, just saying, I'm here if anything, you know, if you get
That's a good
upset, if
point.
you get frustrated with anything, so please come and talk to me. I'm happy to try and sort out any of that.
That's a really good point. And so that they come to you even before they're, lodging a formal complaint.
Yeah, yeah, right. I mean, if it's the same with any workplace, right? If you have a good relationship with someone, then hopefully you take it personally, interpersonally before you escalate it to a different authority or someone else. So,
I think a lot of times when people run into problems, it's because they have a very independent mindset, like, oh, I'm on this property, I'm paying the rent or I'm paying the mortgage, and so I have property rights and I can do what I want on my property. And if somebody has a complaint, that's their issue. I think that's the mentality that often gets folks into trouble. And I'm a big property rights person, but we have to be practical too. And remember, we are all living in a community together.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then the last tip is you don't have to do this alone. I know can be very overwhelming. You hear horror stories, but there's so many fantastic success stories. And a lot of that success is because people, reach out to the resources that they have. One of those resources is Stand Together. They can help you with starting up, researching the laws. Lynn Swanson is in charge over there for the microschool. She's fantastic. We just had coffee a couple of weeks ago, and she can really hold your hand through some of this process. Now, if you are in an active dispute, maybe the government is saying you have to shut down or you have to put in the fire sprinklers or you have to do something you really don't want to do, you can reach out to us at ij.org and we might be able to help. This is also my personal email here, esmith@ij.org.
What a great resource. What a great opportunity. I mean, I feel like you're kind of like a comfort blanket. So it's like, you know, when you're starting out, when you're researching, when you're doing this, you know, you can come before just to check it out. You can come after the fact, like you said, if you're in a legal dispute. But yeah, really amazing. And it's so great to have you and your expertise and all of your support. So we have a little bit of information about the Institute for Justice on our website as well, but of course you can go to ij.org and then of course you can email the brilliant Miss Erica Ewing as well for any initial problem solving and troubleshooting tips. So thank you so much, Erica.
Thanks so much for having me, Whitney. You guys do such fantastic work.
Well, we're happy to promote all kinds of educational innovation and educational choice across the country and across the world. It's so exciting to see the microschool movement expanding for, you know, for customization for kids and to be a great resource for kids all around the world and parents too, of course. So with that, we'll thank you and you've got the email if you need any more details. So wishing you a great day, Erica.
You too. Bye, Whitney.
Bye.